If you're wanting to make a difference, if you're wanting to do good things, you need to be the one to get out and do that, especially if you kind of create a mission or a message that you have to share. I mean, nobody's going to do that for you. You got to do yourself. I've been in the service, it'll be 20 years in July. And any amount of time you spend in the fire service, you're going to have some ups and downs. I don't know many people that have been fired up from day one to the last day of 30 years, They get tired of answering the why. Maybe it's because they never really knew the why, because they weren't taught the why. They were told what to do and they did it. If you don't know why you're doing something and you got somebody that's wanting to learn from you, it's going to be hard to want to do that anymore. And comfort is safety. It feels good to be comfortable. It feels good to know what you're good at or know what you can do and not ever do anything else. I think the biggest mindset change that you have to really incorporate in yourself is just be humble enough to understand that there are a lot of people out there that know a lot more than I do. And I want to learn from them. I want to get better at a skill that I'm not really great in. If I want to do that, then that probably means I'm going to go fail at it quite a bit. You have to embrace the fact that growth requires failure. Why are you here? And I vividly remember every one of us saying, well, to help people. It's got to be deeper. It's got to be more than that. Helping people goes away. It will vanish and you will be left as a empty, jaded, burned out firefighter with nothing else to give. You don't have something deeper than just helping people. To make a difference in the lives of my crew members, in the lives of my family, in the lives of those outside of my organization in the fire service. I'm here to grow and learn every day. I want to become better. I want to have a pursuit of personal growth every day. And I want that to not only be at work, but I want it to echo at home as well, to make the fire service better. We've already talked about a few situations in the fire service. They need to be better. They need to change. That's what I want so bad. You got the senior man or senior firefighter or whatever. I almost hate that term. All it implies is you've been there longer than a lot of other people. That could mean you've been sitting on your butt 10 years longer than anybody else. Senior firefighter isn't a noun. It's a verb. You have to get out and do something to earn that title. You have to really apply yourself to help others grow and learn from what you have learned and the mistakes you have made so that hopefully they don't have to make them.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Firefighters Podcast. My guest today is Jeremy Sanders from Crew First Culture. Crew First Culture are based in Oklahoma, USA, and they teach courses on leadership as well as running a podcast of their own and trying to develop an underground movement for the American Fire Department. Before we jump in there with Jeremy, I just want to acknowledge our partners of the podcast, and most importantly, William Wood Watches, who are joining us again for today's episode. William Wood Watches have actually been with the podcast since the very beginning. If you're unfamiliar with who they are by now, then where the hell have you been? William Wood Watches are the #1 creators of these beautiful luxury timepieces made with recycled fire service equipment. Whether this is the brass helmet embedded in the side of the watch, or whether it's the hose that actually features as the strap on your wrist, there is authenticity and history in every aspect of this watch. The owner, Johnny, came up with the whole brand in memory of his grandfather, who was William Wood himself. He served for decades in the British UK Fire and Rescue Service, winning medals for his bravery. These watches allow you to carry a piece of history right there on your wrist. Even looking at the straps, they've served a minimum of 10 years operationally on the front line. This stuff's actually been there with the heroes doing the business, and you can take a look by heading over to williamwoodwatches.com, and you may even be able to crowbar yourself a bit of a discount if you drop us an email, the firefighterspodcast@gmail.com. We may be able to sort you out. We can have a little word with Johnny, see what we can do. So if you are sitting comfortably, let's buckle up for safety, and I will see you crazy cats on the other side.
Okay, I think that's good.
You smiling, brother? You good?
I sound pretty okay for you?
You sound fantastic. You sound better than me. But that's,
okay.
I think that's the accent. So, don't blow smoke up your ass. But, mate, seriously, I don't know what it is.
Thinking the other day, I was like, man, I'm going to get on there, and people that are around him, listening to him, are some hillbilly hick person with a cowboy accent or something. So
it comes with an air of authenticity. People assume you've done like 150 years in the fire service, even when you just say anything remotely to do with the fire department.
Perfect.
Right.
I'm ready, man.
Jeremy Sanders, welcome to the Firefighters Podcast. How you doing, brother?
I'm awesome, man. Quite an honor. So thank you.
Man, that's a lie. I'm not believing that. No, and I do appreciate it. We don't do much of this sort of stuff in the UK, so it is kind of strange and unique. You know what? I know it's not something we necessarily plan to talk about, but what is it about sort of the American fire department, the American fire services, that you guys just seem so much more proud, and so it's like you bathe in the passion and the kind of like you celebrate each other, you acknowledge each other. You seem to be so much deeper in the culture. Why is that? I mean, it's all about how sort of Crew First culture has got started. It seems so dripping in passion. Do you know what I'm saying?
Well, I understand what you're saying, and it's hard for both of us. You know, we don't have a lot of context on the other side.
Yeah,
just kind of what you maybe see through still photos or whatever. But for us, just the honesty part, I will say that it's not everywhere. I mean, it might be one of those kind of, you're seeing the highlights. There's a lot of American fire service that are checked out and just kind of jaded and not in it. But I think that the people that are just love it, just love the job, just are thankful and blessed to have the opportunity to be a part of this job and this service. It's an amazing chance to really, you know, to enjoy what you're doing, to make a difference in people's lives and to grow and get better every day with not only your friends and new family at work, but hopefully learn things to transition into creating a better person when you come back home too. And it's an amazing career. What other career can you look in the podcast and see dozens of career related podcasts, social media pages and training companies? And it's just crazy how into the job so many people are. And I don't know the answer to that. I'm glad that it's like that.
No, man. And I totally agree with you. And I think there's a strange thing that it depends how you want to start and which like direction people want to go in when they start their careers. Because like you say, some people hit the valleys and stuff like that. I mean, I know we spoke about something we're going to speak about coming through about finding the real why. You did a great thing about that. I'll ask you about it in a little bit. But it's kind of like the chicken and egg about, for me, when people, if they lean into the job a little bit harder, then it almost gives you a greater sense of fulfillment, doesn't it? But like you say, when people start to check out, they take less from it. And therefore, they become more disinterested in it, and therefore, then that becomes like a negative, self-perpetuating loop. But the same can happen in reverse. Do you know what I mean? If you just lean in, people start to gravitate towards you, and you kind of have to go first, though, don't you?
Yeah, I think that's the way it should be. You know, if you're wanting to make a difference, if you're wanting to do good things, you need to be the one to get out and do that, especially if you kind of create a mission or a message that you have to share. I mean, nobody's going to do that for you. You got to do yourself.
Yeah.
So one thing I will say, like for me, you know, like anybody else, I feel like it's probably across the board. I've been in the service, it'll be 20 years in July. And any amount of time you spend in the fire service, you're going to have some ups and downs. I don't know many people that have been fired up from day one to last day of 30 years, you know. So you're going to have some downtimes too. And for me, now that I'm kind of back up on a high point, I have so much more fun. I enjoy the job so much more. I enjoy life so much more when I'm into it, when I am really reaching and striving for, you know, a pursuit of daily growth and trying to get better at different tasks and skills and things like that. I just enjoy the job so much more. And now that I've kind of got out of the slump, that last slump that I was in, it's really easy for me to see. And it's a cool thing to see. And it kind of helps keep you going, because I don't want to get down in that low valleys anymore and really not enjoy what I'm doing. I want to stay on top and enjoy it.
I mean, you've written so many amazing things on the blog, and people you've had contribute to the page from your own learnings and observations. And I wanted to start with this whole sort of concept of creating your foundation. You spoke about this trend that you've seen these sort of great fire service, great fire department leaders are leaving the fire service, and they're taking all of those valuable lessons and experience that they've gained over the years of careers without really sharing them. And I think there's kind of two sides to that coin about some people don't feel like they've deserve to share it, and then some people are kind of hoarding the information. But when you became a station officer, you said that there were areas that you had no choice but just to learn as you went. Now, so why do you think that trend was happening when you wrote about that, creating your foundation?
Man, I honestly, that's a great question. I wish I knew the answer. I'm trying to find the answer to that, and it's not a my department thing. The more I get out and network across the pond, or whatever you want to call it, it's everywhere. We're struggling to share experiences and knowledge that we've gained through entire careers before leaving, and we're struggling to develop officers before they step in that role, and we're struggling to properly mentor the new firefighters coming on. And I don't know why. I don't know why that is. I feel like almost some of it is just we're losing a little bit of teaching spirit to us. We're kind of falling back on, well, if you have a training division in your department, that's their job to train us, and it doesn't happen. If we don't get out and do it ourselves, it's not going to happen to the full potential or the full area that we need to. And I don't know. I think maybe part of that is, you hear it a lot. Why are you always asking why? These newer people, they always want to know why. They don't just do the job. Well, I think maybe that's your answer right there, is these kind of middle road people, the older people, they get tired of answering the why. Maybe it's because they never really knew the why, because they weren't taught the why. They were told what to do and they did it, and they didn't really have a why. So if you don't know why you're doing something, and you got somebody that's wanting to learn from you, but you don't know how to answer their questions, it's going to be hard to want to do that anymore. And I don't know. I mean, maybe that has something to it, but
I remember reading about, I think it was like Einstein or somebody said, you never fully understand something until you can explain it to a child. And the reason I think that's relevant to what we're talking about here is some people, and I think this might be a generational thing. I'm listening to you there, and I'm hearing what's changed, and I'm thinking to myself, this whole instant gratification society that we live in now, where things come fast. I remember, I wanted to be in the fire service since I was very, very young, and I was doing the whole cadets thing, and I would go down and see the fire department. I would read the books, and my dad we had this thing called Scouts and Cubs, and I think you kind of have it over there, but they're like, it's like a kids club that you go to, and you like learn campfires and you learn knot tying and all that sort of stuff. So I had a little bit of an introduction to that sort of stuff, but I knew it was going to take a long time for me to develop into that. Whereas now we're into this whole instant gratification thing, and I don't know if I think I'm fishing here, but I wonder if that's adding to the level of people never truly understanding why they wanted to get into it, because then when it comes to the point where you try and disseminate that, when you try to speak about it to people coming into the job now, maybe would struggle to articulate. But also, like, we're in an age now, like when we're doing podcasts, we came from an age where we read the books, and then we kind of moved into a period of time where we had presentations and stuff like that, and we need to fully embrace things like this, like what we're doing now. We're not, well, I can only speak for myself. I'm not an expert, do you know what I mean? But I always say, I try and speak to people that are, and I try and capture it, because I feel like this is the new way of developing people. This is the new way of capturing that information, capturing the stories. I joined the fire service and the fire department because I fell in love with the stories. I heard about the person, or I looked at the badge and it meant something to me because of this image that I had created in my head. But then I wonder if people got a bit too proud and a bit too cool for school, and we stopped talking about it because we're like, oh no, I'm too cool for that. I don't want to talk about it. And people got a little bit like that, and then it had the effect of people were never going to capture those lessons. They weren't going to capture the stories. We stopped talking about it. We stopped feeling in love with it a little bit. Does that relate at all?
Oh yeah, and I think there's no one answer to this question. I think it's a problem big enough that it's not going to be solved by one answer. I think there are lots of different things that go into this. I think there's lots of different reasons for that. Just some older people getting checked out, getting jaded, getting tired of being involved in things and just basically collecting a paycheck, or it's kind of people that have been put under officers that weren't the greatest to be around, and they kind of get a bad attitude about it and want to just be done. And there's just so many things that go into it.
How soon do you think people can start passing on that knowledge? How soon should we encourage people to start trying to lead or mentor each other?
I feel like, at my department, we've got a rookie school, so they get hired. They go through this rookie school that's, anywhere from 22 to 26 weeks, somewhere around there. And so, when they graduate from that, they come straight on shift. And I was lucky enough this past rookie school to get a new person on my crew. And I did it then, and I'm going to do it every chance from now on, because I knew we have a great environment for a new person to come on. I knew we had some great people to mentor and train new firefighters. And so I wanted to make sure that we were in a position that we could do that. So otherwise it's just kind of random. So, but day one for me, I 100% agree with what you just said. And that's exactly why they have just spent, basically 5 months, 6 months going through skill after skill after skill after skill, way more training than we do. And so hopefully they have something that they can teach us. And even if it's just some refresher stuff, they are getting a taste of what it feels like to start that route right off the bat, to start kind of teaching, to start, sharing what knowledge they have right out of the gate. And I think that is so important to really put that on their plate right away. And no, I'm not, putting them in charge of creating huge classes or, curriculum or anything like that. But just take us out for an hour today and let's do some hose stuff. How did they teach you guys to maneuver around with hose?
Just like do those micro sessions where they're just standing. Just standing in front of people and building that confidence and just speaking. Even if sometimes I'll give the recruit the sheet. So we take a sheet out on parade which tells people where the runners and riders are and who's riding what appliance and stuff like that. I'll get them to just stand there and read it out. Not in a embarrassing them way, but just that act of stand and deliver, because they're going to have to do it in face of the public anyway. People always say I'm not a leader on our crew. And I'm like, yeah, you are. If you're a firefighter, you're a leader in general. You're going to step off the truck, you're going to step off the pump straight into the eyes of the public. And I might be dealing with the incident, but I'm going to point at you and go and sort that crowd out. I need everybody off the highway. I need everybody out of that building. And you need to step up and lead. You might be leading the public. You might be leading a casualty. You might be leading a crew in an internal structure. I need you to lead. So getting people to just step up and do that. Plus, I would kind of think as well, when you get a recruit, it's like a way to sneak in the back door of some of the older people on the crew and get them to run the fundamentals, because sometimes it's harder, not difficult, but it's harder to get them to do it when they're like, we know this stuff. And I'm like, you kind of know it, but I would like you to run it anyway. But then when you say, we're going to do it for the benefit of the recruit, we've got to do some recruit training. And then you see a few of the cracks that you didn't have an opportunity to go over before.
I think this right here, what we're talking about is it's my way of maybe trying to fix that first question. If I am getting these people to get used to teaching and sharing what they know right off the bat, they start their career and enter into kind of the middle meat of their career just doing it. That's just how it is. And so hopefully maybe over time that will kind of cure some of that if we start them off young.
Yeah. Now, I love an article. I was looking through your blog before we came on, and I read one that effectively spoke about this sort of subconscious conditioning. That's kind of like kind of groupthink that occurs when people confine themselves to a single station or a district or a department because it's comfortable and it's familiar for them. So, what do you think people are scared of or reluctant of to going beyond those current surroundings, and how can you prepare yourself mentally for moving outside of that comfort zone? Do you think there's benefits in moving watches? Is it common in the States for people to move stations or move crews, and do you think they should be doing that?
For us, we went through a pretty lengthy time of, it seemed like there was constantly movement. Now, the past couple of years, it seems like it's been pretty stable. And so, you just never know when that's going to shift. So it could be pretty regular changes, or it could be, you're with somebody for a few years. And I think there's a benefit to both. I've always loved the idea of being with a group of people for a pretty good amount of time, just because you start to learn, each other's strengths, each other's weaknesses. You kind of get to know the personalities. You get close to them, and you get close to their families, hopefully. And there's a lot to be said about spending a lot of time with a particular crew, as a group. But these past couple of years as an officer and kind of going through some growth and learning some lessons that I needed to learn, I've definitely learned there's positives to the other side too, because if I just stay with a particular group of people, my message and the things that I'm trying to do, the culture I'm trying to change, it doesn't ever go anywhere. Yeah, we might have a great crew, but that doesn't ever go anywhere else in the department. And I'm not going to really ever affect any kind of global change, even at my department level. My circle is going to be very small. And if I don't kind of disperse some of the people that I've tried to teach and tried to show how fun it can be, it won't really ever do any good to make it bigger than just our group. So, there's benefit to both. I think as far as why people have a hard time getting out of the comfort zone, comfort is safety. It feels good to be comfortable. It feels good to know what you're good at or know what you can do and not ever do anything else. Yeah. And what goes along with that is the fear of failure. And so I think the biggest mindset change that you have to really incorporate in yourself is just be humble enough to understand that there are a lot of people out there that know a lot more than I do. And I want to learn from them. I want to get better at a skill that I'm not really great in. If I want to do that, then that probably means I'm going to go fail at it quite a bit until I do get better. And so you have to embrace the fact that growth requires failure. And, there's a lot of humility in that. And I think that's the biggest obstacle we have to overcome is just getting used to it's okay to fail. It's okay to mess up because you're not going to get any better if you don't try, for sure. And you're not going to get any better if you don't go through some failures here and there.
You make some great points there around, like you say, learning from different people as well. Because I was with the same team for a couple of years, and then as I would sort of have this is kind of where the podcast came through, really. As I started having conversations with different people from different departments and different places in the UK, and I thought, there's some absolutely incredible people out there that just because of the communities they work in or the kind of layout of the patch that their station covers, they're going to have experiences that I'm never going to have. And how egotistical it was of me to think that the best people were on the watch of the station that I'm working on. These people are everywhere, and you're never going to be able to layer those experiences if you don't get it. And it doesn't mean that you don't like where you are either. If you want to move and develop yourself, it's not because you hate where you are. I say to people, I'm like, hey, I'm looking to move in a year or two, and they're like, oh yeah, you're not getting on very well. You're not very happy. I'm like, yeah, I love it. I love where I am, but I also, that station does water rescue, or that station does technical rescue, or they're specialists in high rise, and I'm like, I want to go there. I want to have those rope rescue skills. I want to have that development. And there's also a thing, and you kind of mentioned it there, but this, I used to do something in my old business that we did an exercise called sunshine and shadows, right? And this sounds like really corny and everything like that. You can probably come up with a better name for it, right? But it was called sunshine and shadows. And it would be like, we'd sit in a group. It wasn't like group therapy, but it was like feedback. And we'd sit somebody in the middle. So for example, we'd have say you were sat in the middle. We say, Jeremy, you sit in the middle, we're going to do yours. And first we do the sunshine, which is we tell you something that is one of your greatest strengths. So we'd say, Jeremy, man, you're so passionate, you're so articulate, and you just go into such depth about the service and the department and all your skill set. And I think that's such an incredible skill of yours. That's the sunshine. And you are right, great. Thank you for that. The shadow is, man, because you appear to be so knowledgeable and because you're so articulate, it makes me feel uncomfortable about sharing my opinion because I can't put my words together as well as you can. And the similar thing, like if you've got somebody that's really confident, you're like, Dave, whatever, man, when you jump off the truck, you're just on it. Like you drill hard and you're so strong or you're so fit or you've got so much experience. It's a real strength, but the shadow that casts over somebody else is that they're never going to grow that area of them if somebody else is doing it so well. Does that make sense? So if they don't move crews or they don't move stations, it makes the team really slick, but also they never develop that skill.
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
We often speak on the podcast, and you kind of said it at the beginning about, why people join the job. And that common response is always, because I want to help people or because I want to make a difference. But I've found in the sort of 10 years in one department and 13 years in sort of our whole-time service that the why is a real big thing that people need to have a real think about. I mean, you mentioned it at the beginning of it, and this is kind of a mid-range income position. People don't necessarily come into this just for the money, and there's a lot of personal sacrifice required, not just by you, but your family, your friends, your loved ones. And in your opinion, what do people need to find to not allow it to consume them? How do they find that sort of why that you've spoken about before? Does it need to be more than just wanting to make a difference? Because it's not going to carry it through, is it?
No, absolutely not. And I reached out to you yesterday because I was really kind of, I don't know, I was kind of taken back when I, saw that question that you were kind of wanting to talk about, because like I said with you, I literally just finished up a class that I've been excited to really get in the books. And that's exactly what it is. It's called Why Are You Here? And it's kind of tailored to, the newer firefighters. And I feel like this is something that really needs to be done. And so I'm glad to have it done. And when I saw like questions like that's going to be fun to talk about that, because you obviously kind of share some same thoughts as well. But for me, why are you here? And I just think back to when I was new, and that was literally something that a lot of people ask you. And I vividly remember every one of us saying, well, to help people. I don't know if that's because that's kind of the canned answer that's easy to say, or for me, and it's taken me 19 years to figure this out. So this isn't going to be something that, you just take a 30-minute kind of just a deep thought and figure it out. But it's got to be deeper. It's got to be more than that, because you go, 5-10 years of these, going and lifting people up, put them in bed, going and, dealing with medical calls that aren't really medical calls in the middle of the night, waking up, 3-4 times. And it helping people goes away. It will vanish, and you will be left as a empty, jaded, burned out firefighter with nothing else to give. And that will happen very quickly if you don't have something deeper than just helping people. And so I'm here to make a difference. I'm here to make a difference in the lives of my crew members, in the lives of, my family, in the lives of those outside of my organization in the fire service. I'm here to make a difference in the lives of our citizens. Number two is I'm here to grow and learn every day. I want to become better. I want to have a pursuit of personal growth every day. And I want that to not only be at work, but I want it to echo at home as well. And the last one is to make the fire service better. I want so bad to see, we've already talked about a few situations in the fire service that they need to be better. They need to change. And that's what I want so bad, is I see these areas that we can be better in and we should be better in. And I want to do everything I can to make them better. And, it's just 3 things, but those 3 things keep me going. Those 3 things help me when, I haven't had a fire in forever, and all I'm doing is lifting people up and putting them in bed. And man, it's hard to keep going when you go through stretches like that. It's tough. And so
you have to really zoom out and think that person that you're going to see, you're like, if it's just for you, like, I'm just going to go help people, like you say, that runs out. But for that one individual, you are the story they're going to tell. So when they go, and they go, hey, I called the fire department out once. And who was that guy? What's his name? Jeremy. This guy Jeremy came out, right? And he did X, Y, Z, or he did ABC. And before he turned up, it was tragedy. And then he came and the team did X, Y, Z, and it became this. You will be their story. You might be their entire life's interaction with the fire department, and you will be the story that they tell. And like you said as well, we're just custodians of this. This was here long before we were, and it's going to be here long after, and are you going to leave it in a better place than what you found it? People often say to me, when I'm doing the podcast, and it's people that I've probably known before I was ever doing it, and they're like, oh, you know what, Pete? people, and these are the pessimists, and there's not many of them. We get some incredible feedback from the podcast, but you always get the people that want to throw stones, and at the end of the day, then they're not the people that want to do it anyway. But they always say stuff like, oh, Pete, you'll be remembered for doing all the stuff in the community and flapping your gums and talking about this and talking about that. And I said, yeah, you're probably right. I said, do you know what they'll probably remember you for? And they said, what? Nothing. They won't remember you for anything. And are you going to make a difference? Are you going to leave it better than you found it? All of these things. And every time you have a setback, the pessimist is stood there and they're ready to go, oh man, you know what? Ram this. Let's just forget it. They don't know what you've got and they don't want to listen to you. And the job's ruined. The job's out. And I'm like, man, I can't engage with that. It doesn't fit my moral compass. I can't go there with you because there's no way for me to navigate back from there. And I see what it does to you. I don't see anybody enjoying being part of the thing that they spoke so highly about for so long when they're choosing to see all the negatives. They hunt them out like it's a little nugget, like they want to get reward for it. And it's hard for them to see people enjoying the job sometimes. And there is still so many incredible people. But that's why, people like yourself and whatever, you've got to put it out there. You've got to kind of get over yourself. And I know you have, but I know we're not alone in this. There's so many other people because they want to re-engage in that why I did it, and know that they're not alone, because when they are sat on a crew one day and they've got somebody covering from a different station and they don't want to be here, and maybe they're 6 months away from retirement and they feel alone, they feel like, man, is this what it's like everywhere? Is everybody not enjoying it? And you're like, no, we're still pushing forward. There's still so many things for us to solve in the community just because we're not doing the same jobs that we used to go to. It's about creating that culture. You speak a lot about culture in your classes, and in my experience, unlike equipment changes or rules or policies or even actual personnel adapting to it, it's changing or developing a culture can take a lot longer for organizations to do. I think if you read books and stuff, it takes 5 or 6 years to change a culture because you have to be so consistent with it. And you almost have to share a message to an extent where you're sick of hearing it. If you're sick of hearing it, it's probably about the time that it's going to start sinking in. How do you think we create those cultures?
Man, you said it right there. Just that consistency. And to be honest, that is something that I struggle with no matter where I'm at. I struggle with at work. I struggle with at home as a parent, as a husband. Consistency is hard for me. And I don't know if that's just an ADHD thing or just my personality or what, but that has been a struggle. And like you said, it's slow. If you're expecting to make big changes and drastically, make something better quickly, you're going to be very heartbroken because it's not going to happen. And I've been the captain at my station now, which is basically the station, the boss, leader, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah,
I've been at my station for 3 years, and I'll tell you right now that I'm just starting to see some of the good come out of a lot of work. And I will be the first to admit that I could have been a lot more consistent through that time. And maybe that timeline would have sped up if I could. But man, it's hard. It's hard to stay at it every day and just keep pushing. And something for me, especially now, I'm still new in the officer role and kind of this whole thing, I'm kind of learning it on the fly, but I've got this mission and I know what I want our crew to look like and our culture to look like. Well, if that's the case, if this is me, if this is my vision, well, I have to be the one pushing it. I can't just throw it out there on the table and say, hey, everybody, this is the way we're going to do it. So let's go. And I'm going to hold you accountable from day one on pushing this because this is what we want. Well, it's not really what we want. It's mainly what I want.
Yeah.
And I'm kind of going through a growth stage right now where I feel like I'm kind of, I've done it long enough and I feel confident enough in what my mission and vision look like that I'm ready to start asking, my crew members kind of how they feel like we can make it better and hopefully get a little bit more buy-in from them because they are a part of that. And maybe that will help kind of that whole process because I haven't really done a lot of that. I've asked them, what they need from me as their officer. And and how to make things better. But I've never truly put it on their plate of saying, you know what I like, you know what I want our culture to be like. How can we make it a little bit different to where you take some ownership of it and responsibility for it, so that I'm not just pushing this, ball by myself. And so that's kind of something that I really, actually, to be honest, plan on dropping just in the next week or so with my crew, and really digging into. So
I want to double click on a few things that you've said there, because
one
is that aspect of like you say, pushing a boulder uphill is the way I see it sometimes, where you start it, but if it is just you pushing it, it's not leadership at all. And I did this for so long, where you're actually, all you is an individual contributor. You're just a nucleus that you plug it into the system and you just power it. It just brings a massive surge in it, but it's not sustainable. It's not consistent, and it will kill you. It will, every time you come back and you realize when you hand it over to them and they placed their hands on the boulder and you went off your shift or you went off whatever, and you came back and found it at the bottom of the hill, and you just got bitter and stamped your feet and you dug in and then just pushed harder and pushed harder, because but you've got to slow down to bring people with you, haven't you? I always think of it like when you watch a space film or something like that, when they go, you come in too hot and you just bounce off the atmosphere, or a little bit like you've got to slow the train down for people to get on. And that's not to say that like they're slower or faster than you, but what I mean is, if you come in too hot, it's like arriving on station in the morning. I do a lot of stuff in the morning. I'll listen to an audiobook on the way in, and then I'll train before we start shift in case we get calls. I don't get a chance to train. So when I come in hot. Do you know what I mean? I come in ready, and you've got to stop yourself stepping in and like high-fiving somebody and saying, oh man, how are we going to smash it today? And they're looking at you, and they've literally just got in there on time, rolled out of bed, and they're looking at you with that blank face, and they're like, dude, don't come here with your high five.
Give me about an hour.
Give me about an hour. And like, if you come into, you almost have to, and it's not like being two-faced. You're not lying to people, but you have to come in slower, come in colder. Yeah. It's the whole like warming up the frog in the frying pan thing. If you come in too hot, they just jump straight out. You've got to slow down and bring them with you. You said about sort of asking your crews how to bring them on. There's 4 great questions I used to do a role called continuous improvement, which is like a CI technician. It's about Kaizen. You ever read a book called Kaizen?
I have not, but my driver and good friend that would consider him one of my biggest mentors, he talks about that all the time. So I have heard it through him. Yes.
Kaizen, Six Sigma, continuous improvement. Have a look. There's a book called Kaizen. It's good. Have a read of it. And there's 4 questions that I go into sometimes with teams. It kind of disarms people, and instead of saying, what's right here, what's wrong here, and all this sort of stuff, it's just 4 simple questions about, what do we want to keep doing? What do we want to stop doing? What do I want to do more of, and what do I want to do less of? It doesn't frame anything as being right or wrong, but it just frames them of, good, what do I want to do a bit more of? What do I want to do less of? What do I want to start doing? What do I want to stop doing? And there's lots of different ways to do it, but it's a nice little box method. And then you can come up with like an effort reward matrix, where you can get the low hanging fruit. And you're like, if you did it in like a pictorial sense on a board, it's you have effort and reward. Effort down the side, reward across the bottom. Is what stuff is low effort, high reward. If we said, we need to build a new fire station because this place is shit, you'd be like, okay, but that's massive effort, it's massive financial investment, might also be massive reward, but it's at the top right of this graph. We're going to struggle to hit that. What's low effort, maximum reward? And we don't just want that, but let's start with the low hanging fruit, because there's some things which are small pivots. These are tweaks. They're not colossal right angles that we've got to pull a hard left and everyone's going to fly out the side door. What can we do that is just a pivot? You wrote a great article as well when I was looking at stuff about blame and responsibility, and it's something to try and, like you said, drastically avoid, especially if you're coming onto a new station. And I love how you sort of flipped the narrative inside of it of, people that blame the youth and the millennials for this like poor work ethic when people are coming into the job now. And you wrote something that was really quite like stark when I read it, and I think you quote it in the middle of the article as well. It says, our senior firefighters have got to get out of their recliners, off their phones, and regain their passion for the job. That is going to be an uncomfortable read for some people when they look at it. But you're right, and I often say, we can't just look at the past and go, oh, it's a waste of time, or this is rubbish. If it was crap before we got here, then that's fine. But if it's rubbish while we're here, or if it's rubbish in the future, that's our responsibility now. Share your thoughts on that for me, because I thought it was a great read, and when I read that statement, I was like, wow, that's strong. But it hit me like a train.
Man, I'm glad to hear that, because some of the I was about to say some of the stuff I write, pretty much everything I write. I don't write a lot, but if it comes out, especially if it's something you can feel like that, then it's coming from inside me, and it's got something behind it, because it's something I have either lived through or experienced or am currently experiencing, and really have something to say about it. And that's exactly where that kind of came from, is personal experience and kind of frustration. And we've got some great senior people in our department, and that have had a lot of good experience and should be taking our department to a whole new level and just really blowing the roof off of things. But to be honest, a lot of these people they're not gone. They're not there. They're checked out. They're sitting in seats and just kind of collecting a paycheck like we talked about. Yeah. And man, it's hard. The higher I go up, if you are in charge of a whole crew, you will quickly understand how important it is to have some informal leadership, because they will make your job either way easier if you got them, or way harder if you don't. Because
you've got to have the big characters. Hopefully those characters, they're so powerful in a team. You've got to know who are the big
taking ones. Care of the things that I don't really have to take care of, behind the scenes, and being more of an inspiration to my people some of the times, instead of me being all the time. There's so many things, and really kind of the main thought behind that, and it might be kind of corny, I don't know, but for me, I hate the term senior firefighter. I just, for the American Fire Service, you got the senior man or senior firefighter or whatever, but I almost hate that term, because it literally implies nothing. All it implies is you've been there longer than a lot of other people. That could mean you've been sitting on your butt for 10 years longer than anybody else. I don't know.
Yeah.
But for me, that's not a noun. Senior firefighter isn't a noun. It's a verb. You have to get out and do something to earn that title. For me, you have to really apply yourself to help others grow and learn from what you have learned and grown, and the mistakes you have made, so that hopefully they don't have to make them. And as you can see, I start getting worked up just talking about it. That's one of the things that we have got to get better at in the fire service. And I don't know, would you say that you're kind of seeing a little bit of the same thing where you're at, or is it just an American thing?
You're absolutely right. I see that all of the time, and it's so challenging to not allow people to correlate time with experience and feeling like they've made it, and that they've gained competence, or that they've gained position of like success. Like people, I sometimes ask people, what's a successful firefighter? And I kind of hate the question sometimes, because it almost frames it as though you've achieved a thing and now you can stop. Yeah. Whereas what it is like you say, it's a verb. It's not a noun. It's a continual process. It's in the doing. It's almost like getting into the middle of the river and starting swimming. And yes, the real analogy is, what does it take to be somebody that can continually swim in the middle of the river and adapt to everything that comes downstream, and pivot and overcome and improvise and be that master problem solver? If you get there and think, I've made it, and do nothing, you drown. And that's what you see. You see a lot of people sitting back because they got into the middle of the river at one point in time, but they've stayed there doing nothing. They've started drowning. And then when they do go into a job, or you do get a series of incidents where they're really tested and they crumble, and then you have a whole different thing on their hands, where they become disengaged because they feel like they're so behind the curve. And then like the upcoming firefighters, the upcoming crew members don't look at them as a position of respect anymore, because they've seen that their skill set isn't there, or their fundamentals aren't there, and the experience stood for nothing. And then you're in a really dangerous place where you can fracture the very concept or the very vision that person had coming into the service, because they had this idea of these, people that were hungry, and these people that were getting after it, and they were curious to get out there and get their hands on the kit and, check the lockers, and the energy was there in the morning. And if that's not there, we hemorrhage so much. We lose the culture, we lose the feeling, we lose that that desire for continuous improvement. So it really has got to be a consistent process. It's not an end point that you achieve. I don't see myself coming to an end with anything. That's not because I'm going to keep getting better forever and ever, but I'm going to keep learning forever and ever, because life continues to change. Technology, incidents, materials that our buildings are made of now, the way that the community is struggling, and we fix one problem and all of a sudden another one occurs, and mental health, and there's so many things. There's no such thing as standing still. Everything else is moving forwards.
No.
If you think you're standing still, everything else, you're actually going backwards. People pull over on the highway of their career and they stop, and you kind of, you're passing by and you're like, dude, are you okay? And they're like, yeah, I'm fine. Well, you stopped. I thought, if you broke down, are you injured? And they're like, no, I'm just stopping. There is no stopping. Right?
Comfortable.
That's it. It's so hard to watch. What are some of the things that we're saying but that we're not doing, in terms of where do you think the fire department is heading over there? What do we want to be aiming towards versus what is actually the reality versus how it feels on station?
There's two that jump out really quickly, and one of them is one of those areas where you're like, you got to be careful what you say because you don't want to say too much. But the other one, just first for me, is for them. I don't know if you all have kind of that saying there, but so for them, basically, when most people say it's what we do every day to prepare ourselves for the job is for them. We want to be ready when somebody needs us. Well, for me, just kind of as a side note, that for them extends out a lot farther. My for them includes my crew, my for them includes my family, and my for them includes my citizens. So it's bigger than that. But that's a big thing right now in America, is the for them. I feel like there is a lot more said than actually kind of done for that. I feel like, especially kind of you get up into the administrative roles, that for them kind of gets blurred because, you have a house that has a lot of fire and it's scary and you don't want to send anybody in, even though that fire is really only in one area of the house. And there's a whole nother area of the house that has bedrooms that we can be doing something to search and look for people. But, we see too much fire and we're not going to go in there. And that's just a very kind of on the kind of surface kind of idea.
We're so scared about somebody saying, do you put the crew in there and they, somebody died, somebody injured themselves. The safest thing to do, people think, is nothing, but that comes at a tremendous cost as well.
Oh yeah, absolutely. You will never be safer than when you are truly competently trained on whatever particular area you're talking about. That is honestly the really only way to get to a point where I can say I am safer now than I was, a month ago, because I trained enough in that area that I know what I'm doing. I'm competent in that skill. I can do it safer now than I could back then. And that's how I wish we approach safety. We approach safety by becoming more trained, better trained, and more competent in those areas instead of just kind of writing policies to get safer. And so, yeah, that's kind of where I'm at with that for sure.
I always, when I think about some of the stuff I do with my children, and I'm not sure I'm getting the words right when I say this, because I keep saying this to myself and I don't think it comes off right, but I always say to the parents, I'm like, do you want your kids to be safe or do you want them to be strong? And some people, it bounces straight off them because I don't think I'm communicating. I try and think that I'm good with my words sometimes, but I don't think it comes off right. But what I'm trying to say to people is, like, I encourage my kids to go and speak to people, and I encourage them to, eat something that's fallen on the floor 2 minutes ago, and not live in this clinical world. They don't go diving through bins looking for food or anything like that. I feed my kids, but I don't encourage them to never scrape their knees or fall off their bikes, or I always say shy kids don't get sweets. Go and talk to people. Everybody's a stranger. Yes, strangers are scary, and we hear horrible stories about things that happen to children, but it's still very rare. And my heart goes out to anybody that's experienced that, and it's horrific, and I hope it doesn't happen to me. I hope it doesn't happen to my close friends or anything like that, but it's still very rare. And we're creating another risk, which is a whole culture, a whole society of people
yeah.
that don't approach each other, that lose the art of communication, that lose that conditioning, that lose that skill set. And that's why I say, do you want them to be safe? Because if you want them to be safe, just leave them in the house, and just feed them and let them get all of their development from online, and they'll become sick because they won't get exposed to the outside, and they'll become weak because they won't get any forced application on their body. There will be no adaptation that needs to take place because they never go anywhere uncomfortable. And where does that lead? There's a balance somewhere, and I'm sure I'm probably a little bit too far in one direction. I appreciate that, but I would rather they be ready for an opportunity or a threat, rather than being so naive in this ever-evolving world of threats. And I say that both in the aspect of emergency services, but also just in life in general. There's some complex stuff going on out there that I don't know anything about, but unless I'm willing to go out there and know that, whatever it's going to be, I'm going to be strong enough, prepared enough physically, financially, emotionally to try and deal with it. Otherwise, what the alternative is just stay inside, and that's not going to get anybody anywhere.
Absolutely. Yeah, for sure.
Where has a lot of this come from for yourself? I wanted to ask you about books or documentaries or films, or what are some of the books that you suggest people look at, or is there any resources when you think about anything you've read when you first started in your career, or even if it's outside of the job, is there anything that's really helped you, a resource in your development that people go to?
Yeah, absolutely, lots. And just to start off with, I live 100 miles from my actual department, which I know that probably doesn't mean anything to you. It takes me it takes me an hour and basically 40 minutes to get to work. So I'll apply that. And so anytime somebody hears that, the first thing they're going to say is, man, how do you do that? As I get old, on and on.
Drive.
I've never really felt that way. And I kind of enjoy that drive. The past couple of years, I will say over and over again, have been a huge area of growth for me in my life, not only at the fire service, but at home as well. And I will contribute a very, very high percentage of that growth to that drive, because I've been able to grab a hold of completely wasted time and use it for growth. And by doing that, or by saying that, I mean, with podcasts, with Audible books and things like that I can listen to. And it has made a huge difference for me. It's not just wasted time that I'm listening to music. And some days, I'll be in a mood to listen to some music, and there's nothing wrong with that. But we've got 7 kids. We live on a small farm with animals, and we've got a lot going on. And so if I'm relying on coming home and doing some type of reading or something to help me grow, it's not going to happen.
It's not going to happen. So There's no time.
No. And so I've been able to really kind of to grab a hold of that time and make it work for me. And so, but as far as books, and there's definitely 2 that I've listened to over the past couple months that have made a huge impact to me. And I'll start with the first one because the second one is the most recent and the most impact. But the first one is It's Your Ship, and it's done by, I believe he's an admiral, or he was an admiral, Michael Abrashoff. And basically it is a military version of what I want to do at my fire station. He came into a battleship that was the worst ship in his fleet. It was absolutely trash. He completely turned around and it became the best ship in the fleet. And that's exactly, I took so much from that I can apply directly to the fire service. And so I really, really enjoyed that. And the number one that I've listened to it twice over the past couple of weeks, just because I'm actually wanting to go through it with my wife and one of my daughters, just because of some life situation we're going through right now that I feel like it can apply to. But Leadership and Self-Deception, and that's by the Arbinger Institute. I will not promote any more books without bringing that one up, because it has really kind of changed my thinking. And it's basically just a 1-minute summary. It goes into the kind of the lies, deception we tell ourselves to kind of justify putting ourselves above others and kind of making others seem lesser than, or their needs and wants and desires less important than mine. Because I have a tendency to justify why mine are more important. And I have a tendency to kind of create a fictitious image of this person being, they mess up all the time, or they aren't as good as me, or, whatever it is. People have a tendency to do that to others. And really it's a lie that we're telling ourselves to make ourselves feel better and make ourselves justified in kind of being selfish. And man, it's awesome. So I definitely suggest that to anybody. Those are two of my favorite here lately.
Dude, that's a massive delivery. Firstly, thank you for sharing that. Thank you for sharing something quite personal there. But leadership and self-deception, I love that aspect of self-deception that you speak about there. Falling in love with your own deceptions, because you can lie to the rest of the world. You can lie to people about your values, about your beliefs and stuff like that. But when you get in bed at night and you try and tell everybody you've tried your hardest, or like you say, the things you speak about with your children, I always think that's such a great thing, because when I hear parents speaking to their kids at the school gates when they drop them off from school or pick them up or whatever, and people say, try your hardest, do your best, don't do anything you don't want to do, and, believe in yourself. And then sometimes I feel like the kid has the right to turn around and go, are you doing that, Dad? Are you doing that? We've got to be careful not to be hypocrites and allow ourselves to, a lot of the time we're just scared as well. We're scared, even as grown-ups, we never stop being scared in that respect. And we allow common sense or logic to mask what secretly is just fear, and we allow it to masquerade as common sense or logical thinking or something like that. But I love that one. I think for anybody that I'll just add that maybe if people feel a bit intimidated, because some of the books we're talking about there are a couple of hours long. Ones I always try and get people started on are things like Tim Ferriss has a couple of good books. One's called Tools of Titans and one's called Tribe of Mentors. And they are effectively broken into a number of chapters where you can just digest one chapter at a time. And each chapter is a Tribe of Mentors, for example, is a series of people that he's spoken to over time, and it captures little lessons from every single person. So every 5 or 6 minutes or 7 minutes, you're changing the subject matter a little bit. Were there any other habits that you've kind of developed in the last 1 to 3 years that you think have benefited you the most?
I think the biggest one really is, it's just simple and straightforward, just being comfortable in the discomfort. We've already hit on the comfort zone a lot, but it's really big to me. And I'll contribute a lot of kind of what I've been able to be a part of and what I've kind of been just where I'm at right now, to the fact that I've been able to push myself outside of that and be okay with being just uncomfortable. And so, kind of part of that is when situations arise, it's like public speaking for me. That's a very, very easy way to describe this. I have literally been scared to death of public speaking my entire life, and that is no joke. And so
it's universal. It's globally the biggest fear, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, fear. I guarantee you it was for me. Yeah.
More than death.
Towards the end of 2019, my friend and mentor that I already talked about, he kind of pitched the idea of giving a class together at a conference in 2020. And I was like, man, that seems a long way outside of my area, but he's willing to do it with me. And so he just knew how to draw me out. And so that kind of started a domino effect that, man, I really enjoy it. And I don't understand how that shift changed. Yeah. But now, I'm sitting here creating classes like I talked about, hoping to kind of create a platform to where I can easily do these things. And we've made some changes in our family. We've kind of downsized some of the farms so that, we're more able to do some traveling. And so that's an easy way to kind of to transfer what my words are to really my life. I was able to take that step of faith and try it out, and figured out that, man, I really enjoyed it. And I wouldn't know that. I wouldn't be doing any of that if I didn't push myself outside of that comfort zone. And so just being able to kind of look for opportunities to get outside of my little circle and my little area has been huge for me to really grow. And it's not just work. And I like anybody that's listened to anything that I do or or podcasts or whatever, I really enjoy the most the things that aren't just good to hear for work, but they're good to hear for life. If I can learn something, make me better at work, and I can bring it home and be better at home, that's exactly what I want to spend time doing and learning. And so, I've really had some things at home that I've had to change. I've had to be more assertive as a parent and more backing as a spouse. And so those are other things that, that's just kind of outside of my comfort area as my personality goes, but they had to be done.
Man, you're blowing me there, brother, with, just when you talk about being assertive at home, you're right, because so many people they play a role sometimes when they're in their work. And I always say to people, you've got to work twice as hard on yourself as you do on the job.
Say that. For me, really the only thing I can think of is to let myself know how crucial networking is. And that's something I've really only learned the past probably year and a half. I have enjoyed getting to know people outside of my department so much. And that I've been inspired so much by, people all over America, and now, kind of spreading out over other countries and just like you just said, and exactly like you just said, I'm not alone. I'm not the only one that works for a department that I get irritated with or that I get frustrated with, or a crew member that I just can't get over that hump to do better. I'm not the only one. But if I didn't do that, if I didn't network and I stuck myself in my, my station and my department, the walls of my little department, I wouldn't know that, and I wouldn't feel the comfort and be inspired by these people, because if you don't reach out and find that, you just don't know it's there. And so that's something that I always try to share with others is, man, it is a big, big fire service world out there. And you will never know that if you don't take that first step outside of your organization and kind of start to see that, go to classes and conferences and watch some YouTube videos, listen to some podcasts, whatever it is, start kind of meeting these other people that need or want to help others. They want to help others get over humps that they've already been over. They want to help others get better like they did. And they want you to kind of help them when they need it too. And it's just a huge, it's just amazing. I have been truly amazed at how humble, how genuine, how awesome these people are. The big names in the fire service, little names in the fire service, it doesn't matter. They're just great people. And it's been such a blessing for me to start meeting people that I would have never, ever met in my life if I didn't kind of start putting myself out there and doing some things to gain that.
I always say to people, when you start doing that, when you start going on that walk, or you start trying to climb or push or grow in that way, it's not necessarily lonelier, it's just less crowded. There's just less people. It doesn't mean it's lonely. You do find that your circle just becomes different. It's not better or worse than anybody else's. It just changes. And I've felt the value of association that I get from reaching out to people like yourself and other people is that I get those connections, and it makes you feel less lonely. And it makes you feel like you're not crazy, and you're not just like seeing something in the wrong way just because nobody else is seeing what you're seeing at the minute. But you've had different experiences, you know what I mean? So when you have conversations with all the people you have, it's going to change your perspective. It's going to change your optimism. You'll go, hey, I can see a different way of doing this, but nobody else has seen that. So you're looking at something on a totally different angle, and it's the unknown. If they haven't had that conversation that you've had, or they haven't had that moment of inspiration, then it's to be fair to them, it's not surprising they don't feel as optimistic about it, because they haven't seen it, or they haven't had that conversation, they haven't had that insight that you've had. But it makes you feel like you're not wrong for having that insight.
We all have a story. We all have things that need to be shared, because it doesn't matter what you've dealt with. It doesn't matter what you've been through. It doesn't matter what you've kind of overcome or what. Whatever your story is, there is somebody out there that needs to hear it from you, that needs to hear that they are not alone in dealing with whatever, because they now hear you have dealt with it. They need to hear that they're not the only ones that have had to fight this fight. They're not the only ones that have had to, live through these struggles. There are people out there that are doing it, and there are people out there that have done it and overcome them.
Yeah.
And so everybody has a story, and everybody should share that story. It's almost like a life version of what we started this whole thing out with, not sharing your experiences in the fire service. But it's to the life level. We need to be sharing our stories because there's people out there that need to hear them. There's people out there that it will make a difference in their life just by hearing you tell, a situation about your life. And so it's kind of a big thing. And so I like to kind of talk about that too. To me, kind of the best illustration for that is, if you are the person that has that experience, that challenge that you've been or going through, if you keep it to yourself, if you don't share it with anybody or help anybody out with that story, you basically went through whatever that was for nothing. You literally went through that situation in your life that was probably the worst situation that you could ever imagine facing and battling and hopefully winning, but you went through it for nothing. You got no good out of it. If you share it, then you're getting a benefit.
I wanted to ask you, as we're doing so much reflection there, is there anything that, like a common piece of advice that you think people should ignore heading into the fire department, or maybe in life in general?
For the fire service, to me, one you always hear, or at least hear, is it's not your emergency. It can be used in a variety of ways and in a variety of kind of reasons. But basically, to me, when I hear that, it's almost saying that I'm not really going to put any effort out because this isn't my emergency. I'm going to go do my job and get things done, but I'm not going to really do much extra. And so I've always hated that. I wish that would kind of go away. I feel like every emergency that we respond to, even though it might not seem like an emergency to us, most of the time it is probably one of the worst days of that person's life. And so it's easy to, and it kind of ties into a lot of other things we've talked about, but it's easy to kind of fall into that mindset of, oh, here we go again. We're lifting this person up for the third time today or whatever. Well, and I know there are some situations where there are people that just push your buttons, and there are people that abuse the system, and I get it. And I'm not really talking about that, but
control the controllables.
These people, these people call 911 because they need help, and like you talked about earlier, you're probably the bright moment of their day or week or month, and man, that should feel good, and that should feel like that should make you feel like, man, I don't only want to go solve their problem, but I want to do it even better. I want to be even, better at it than I was, and handle it in a way that it even has a better outcome. And that's kind of one of the biggest for me.
Where does this go from now? Because more people need to hear this, and I know you deliver courses and stuff like that. Where do you see this heading?
Honestly, I don't know. And I hope that's good, because, I would have never guessed, a year ago that this is where I would be right now. And with everything going on, I feel like I'm just hoping for, the next opportunity, and then the next one and the next one. And hopefully it's going to be something that I could take advantage of. I mean, I think very quickly, I will say that, like I've already talked about, I hope to kind of get more into the public speaking and kind of teaching some classes and different things like that, just because I feel like I have a lot that I can give to help people. And so I definitely hope that's part of my future. Man, and anybody in the kind of the social media or podcasting or just a public speaker game, as much as I hate it, there's a lot to it. You have to put yourself out there. You have to, get your name out there, and you have to hustle in the posts and all that. If you got a podcast, then, it's a lot of work to kind of keep that going. And man,
it is.
The first 8-9 months that I was doing the podcast, I did like 99 episodes. The next 8 months that I'm basically at right now, I've done like 10. But in that time frame, I started kind of the public speaking thing, and I started having to come up with some classes and different things like that. And so I can't just do it all. Like I already talked about with family and things like that, I don't have an infinite amount of time. And so every time a door opened, I had to figure out what doors I was going to close, because I can't keep them all open. Yeah. I had to kind of back off on the podcast a little bit and the posting on social media a little bit, so that I could kind of keep my mind focused on creating some classes and keep my mind focused on the true priority of my family. And I hope that I'm kind of at the start of this still. I hope there's a lot left, and I feel like I'm here because there's a lot left. So I'm pretty confident in that. There's a lot set up for me. I just have to kind of figure out how to maneuver my way in the right direction. But it's always going to have to be about balance, because as soon as me in my mind start seeing all these great things that I want to be a part of, I start losing sight of the family. I start losing sight on, being a better officer at work and a better, husband and dad and at home. And so it's a constant, literally a constant fight within myself of trying to stay balanced with everything going on.
You've got to find your pace. You've got to find that sustainability, and you've got to bring people with you. You can't do everything. You've got to say no to stuff. I appreciate you being here with us. I appreciate what you do. I thank you for coming and sharing that story with us, brother.
No problem.
Jeremy, this has been significantly better. Not saying that it wasn't going to be good, but it's been significantly better than I thought it was going to be. And that's down to the level of selflessness. And I don't know if I'd have caught you 2 years ago, would it have been as good as this? I don't know. And I'm sure that maybe the person, the Jeremy that you'll become in the next 2 years, will have even more of like an emotional intelligence ninja, where you would just, I look forward to maybe meeting you one day and being bowled over once again in person with how much you've shared with us, mate. Thank you for that. Send my love
absolutely.
Send my love to the family. Send my love to the team and everything like that. And I really appreciate your time today.
Real quick before you go, if you got another minute, I want to say thank you again for this. But for me, the coolest thing with this is, obviously it's very easy to see that tactics vary widely between where I'm from and where you're from.
Yeah.
But the great thing about this is we didn't talk about tactics because we didn't have to. Yeah. We're talking about life. We're talking about leadership. We're talking about mentoring and making each other better. And that has no boundaries. That has no national origin. Yeah. That is across the board. And that's what I love about this is I can meet somebody so far away like you, and hopefully, some listeners that might have never heard me, and share things that they haven't heard. And so that's awesome. It's an awesome opportunity. I thank you very, very much, and look forward to continuing conversations behind the scenes with you, because I feel like we've got a lot to talk about.
Thank you so much for that. I will speak to you soon.
Absolutely. We'll see you, bud. Thank you.
Jeremy Sanders, Crew First Culture. That's Crew First with a 1. Remember, Crew First Culture. What an incredible guy. He's so honest. He just went everywhere. He took us on such an amazing journey around his own life and his personal development. And it really says so much. We spoke about it on the podcast before about how the best thing about the job is the people. It's the people that make the job. It's not the job that makes the people. The badge, the uniform, the whatever. It's just a filter. It's just something we put over the incredible people that are part of the emergency services, and Jeremy has just delivered that in an absolute jab, right hook, knockout blows. Maybe I've just got a subconscious bias, I know, but I sincerely hope you've took some benefit from it as well. I know you will have. Wherever you're listening all over the world, this is all about sharing it. So leave us now. Go have a look, jump in the notes below, go over to Crew First Culture, have a look at the website, go in the articles, you'll see some of the stuff we spoke about, look on the courses. There's so many different things you can learn from getting that different perspective of similar challenges, but in a different place, a different world, a different community. I'll see you soon back here at the Firefighters Podcast. Take care, guys.